Everybody's slowly joining in. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be a part of our What's All the ERP Buzz monthly chat. We're excited to have you here. I want to try and refresh my LinkedIn to see if I can actually see us on there. But I can't. I don't know where it would be. But it says we are. So I'm just going to say we are. Well, welcome everyone. Let's get started. It is 4 o'clock. So we like to keep these chats 20 minutes or less. So we don't want to waste any time. And thank you again for joining us today. We're excited to have you here. My name is Amy Keenan. I am the host and founder of the ISV Society, and excited to have you here. And I'm going to introduce our guest today from Notice. I'm going to also share my screen. So let me do that. We'll be good to go. Okay. Move this over there. All right, let me introduce our guest today, Callie from Notice. She is here to chat with all of you. So thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. And just a little brief introduction. She's been with Notice on the marketing team for over 8 years and very experienced in the payments industry, focusing on helping customers improve their accounts receivables process, which is why we're talking about the top tips for improving your process today. So thank you, Callie, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Amy, for having me.
Sure.
I can go ahead and try to share my screen now.
Yeah. And if it looks good simultaneously, we'll keep it. If not, I'll just stop sharing.
See how it works. Okay. Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint deck?
So I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thanks Amy for having me. That was a great introduction. So I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about tips and tricks on how to improve your accounts receivable process. Of course, we can all imagine how important our AR process is, collecting money and managing our revenue. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to help improve your AR process, whether it's, if you can just take 1 or 2 key points away and add it into your AR process, and that would be awesome. So the first tip that we're going to talk about is automation, or to automate. So there's a lot of different pieces in an AR cycle, from the moment the invoice is created all the way down to when an invoice is paid, or like a payment is processed and then the payment is applied to the invoice in like the accounting system. So if we think about all of those little steps and then we, multiply it by hundreds or even thousands of recurring invoices, the labor can add up, right? So any part of that process that we can automate is going to just reduce the labor from your side or from your team and give them more time to focus on proactive activities like customer success or customer satisfaction. And I'm going to be citing a study that payments.com did a couple of years ago in 2020 on B2B customers or B2B companies, and it was all about their payment process. So one of the points of the report was showing that companies that focus on manual AR processes actually saw a longer DSO, or day sales outstanding, than companies who relied on automation. And DSO is important because that's basically how long our invoices stay unpaid. And so we want to make sure that we can try to get paid as soon as possible to increase our cash flow. So I'm going to walk you through a typical AR cycle from the start of an invoice to when it is paid. Now, hopefully your AR cycle looks a little bit like this, maybe with a step or 2 added here and there. So we're going to start with where the invoice is created, most likely in your accounting system, and then it's posted. And then once the invoice is posted, you're going to deliver that to your customer. So maybe that's in the mail or through email. And then you might have to send some payment reminders. So unless you're fortunate enough to get payment right away, you're probably going to either maybe call your customer to remind them, or again, send a letter through the mail or email. And then once you finally get the customer to agree to pay, then you need to collect and process the payment. So maybe you're taking checks in the mail or taking credit card numbers over the phone. And then we need to go ahead and process that. And then after the payment is processed, then we have to send out the confirmation receipts to the customer, letting them know that it was approved. And then finally, we're applying that payment back into the accounting system or wherever the invoice is living. So again, if we can kind of think about this, it's sort of, if you think about it, it's like quite an extensive process, and this is just for one invoice. So if we multiply that by hundreds of invoices on a monthly basis, if we're doing all of this manually, it can add up. And this is just if everything goes smoothly the first time, right? You might have to send multiple payment reminders, or maybe the credit card didn't go through and you have to process it again. So this could even be a longer, a bigger circle. But the great thing is everything in this circle, basically, we can automate. So everything that I just turned gray, if you have the right tools in place, you can automate all of this. So you can automatically send out invoices and payment reminders. You can have payments processed automatically, confirmation receipts, and then applying those payments back into your system. So it's good to just kind of take a look at how this process is, a typical process, what your process looks like, and if there's pieces along the process that you can automate to kind of reduce that labor for your team. All right, and so the second thing that we're going to be talking about is sending out payment reminders. So payment reminders is something that it seems simple, but a lot of companies aren't doing it today because, again, it's going to add to that manual labor if you are doing it manually. But if we can find a way to automate and schedule these reminders, then it's great for both you as the merchant as well as your customer, right? So we're all human. Sometimes we just need a little reminder. And with customers, they can payment reminders do things like help them avoid late fees or even getting their services shut off. So if we want to do everything we can to help the customer avoid penalties like that, and just by sending them a simple reminder, they can help do that and increase our relationship with our customer. And then on your side as a merchant, it can greatly decrease late payments and increase your cash flow. And we know that past due payments are a big issue for a lot of companies. And in fact, going back to that study, over a third of the surveyed businesses, so they're waiting over 30 days, like over a month, almost 2 months to receive some payments, which again is really just going to decrease their cash flow on hand, and it's just putting more effort into collecting those payments. So when we look at payment reminders, what should we be doing if we're sending out these payment reminders? So I think the first thing to think about is like how often you send them out. So, I mean, you can have different templates in place and send out, maybe the templates increase in urgency as you send them out, but maybe you send one out a month in advance and then a week before, a day before, and then even on the due date before it's actually going to be considered past due. And once we got, if you have these templates in place and have them scheduled, then you don't have to, your team doesn't have to worry about sending them out manually. And then what should we include on the payment reminder? So we want to make sure that like when we send out a payment reminder, the customer doesn't have to go back and like find the original invoice, right? So if they haven't paid yet, then maybe they don't know like where that email is. So we want to make sure that the payment reminder has everything that they need in order to process that payment, right? So, having the invoice details, the due date, the amount, of course, and then giving them what they need to pay. So maybe that's a pay now button, which would be great so that they can just click on a button and process a payment immediately. Or if you don't have that ability, then at least providing them the information they need to, mail a check or process a payment, to call you and give you a credit card or something like that. And then we also want to be transparent about any of those penalties that we were talking about if it does go past due, right? So you just want to be completely transparent with your customers and make sure that once it's past due, it's not going to be a surprise to them that there is a late fee or like their services are being interrupted for whatever reason. And then the last thing, which seems simple, but it is often forget about, is the contact information. So make sure it's really easy to get a hold of you if they have a question about their invoice. Maybe it's just a simple question, or maybe it's even like a dispute. They think there's something wrong with the invoice. You want to make sure that they can get in contact with you right away so they can get that taken care of and so they can process the payment. All right, and then the third thing we're going to be talking about is reducing double entry. So double entry is where we're keying or entering in information twice or sometimes more than that. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you take a credit card over the phone and you process it like through an online terminal, or maybe like you key it into a physical terminal. So that's the first time that you're entering in that information. And then the second time is when you have to go back to your accounting system and apply that payment to the invoice, right? So we kind of entered in those numbers twice. Or a similar thing maybe is that, like, if you take credit cards over the phone, you're not necessarily entering it twice, but you're listening to the customer say it and then you type it in. So it's another place where there could be mistakes made every time we're entering, like manually keying in that payment information. So this is obviously a big risk for typos, human error, and this is going to increase billing mistakes, which it will increase billing disputes. And like we just talked about, a huge cause of late payments are from billing disputes because customers are trying to get a hold of you to fix that mistake on their invoice. So we want to do everything that we can to just reduce the amount of times that we enter in information, like payment information. So a couple ways to do that is by simply like integrating that payment information or that payment process into your accounting system. So wherever that invoice is living, if you can process that payment directly against the invoice instead of entering it in, like, again, a physical terminal or an online terminal and then retyping it. Another great option is to be able to save credit card information or payment information on file. Now, I know there's like a lot of security concerns around that, but there's some great tools out there, some like vendors that can help you make sure that you're securing that information correctly. But if you can store credit card information on file, then you don't have to enter it in every time you get a payment from a customer, right? So you can just ask them if you want to process, MasterCard 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you don't have to enter it in multiple times. And then another great way to do to reduce double entry is by simply giving customers the option to process payments themselves. So this can be like payment hyperlinks, online terminals, or like a customer payment portal. So just empowering customers to be able to process payments themselves. So you're reducing the labor on your side. You don't have to enter in the information. And then it gives them the opportunity to take control over their payments and process from anytime or anywhere. And then just a little bit more about payment portals. So not only does it empower your customers and give them control over their own payments, but it can also increase customer satisfaction or customer loyalty because it just makes things easier to do business with you. And it's also a great upsell or cross-sell tool as well if you use it that way. All right, and then the fourth tip, final tip that I'm going to be talking about is offering multiple ways to pay. So all of us have, a lot of different kinds of customers. Some of your customers might be businesses, so they have a very specific way of doing business or like how they want to make payments. Or if there's consumers, we often, as a consumer, we have our own preferred methods of payment. So if you have multiple options or multiple ways to pay, you're giving the customers flexibility and basically, being able to meet the needs or the desires of all your different customers. And this can help with, decreasing late payments or past due payments because now they don't have to, create a whole brand new system or a new way, accept a new payment method in order to be able to make a payment for your business. And then it, again, increases customer loyalty or satisfaction by just giving them what they want in a business process. And we've seen a really big shift into digital payments, specifically like 2020, obviously, because we, again, have employees, companies working from kind of like anywhere. So being able to process payments digitally really helps with that instead of having, like things like physical checks. So let's talk about a couple payment options. So of course there's credit cards. And again, we saw like a big increase in credit cards in 2020 and they continue to increase. Credit cards are great. Consumers love them because you often get, points or rewards for using them. Businesses also like to pay with credit cards as well, maybe for the same reasons, but also because it's like an immediate way to pay, right? So if I use a credit card today, it's like a 1-day payment. I don't have to mail a check or anything like that. And then as a merchant accepting credit cards, it's also essentially like a guarantee. Like if that credit card goes through and gets approved, it's basically a guarantee. So in 1 day, it's an immediate payment. You're going to get your funds. And then the next option or payment option I want to talk about is ACH or electronic checks. So there's still a lot of companies out there that are accepting physical checks. So if you are still doing that, you can cut out all of that paper, the printing of the check and then having to wait for a check to be mailed to you and then taking that check to the bank. You can just process checks electronically as well. So that's kind of essentially like a same day thing. Your customers can process checks online, and then you don't have to. It greatly reduces the amount of time, all of the mailing and taking it to the bank and all of that. So if you're still using paper checks, electronic checks is a great, next step. And then the last one I want to talk about is sort of like a payment option. So it's like automatic payments. And this is something that we might be familiar with in our personal lives, right? So if you have, maybe you pay your cell phone bill or utility bills and you sign up for automatic payments so you don't have to go in there every month and make a payment. Or, maybe even some of those things that we don't have a choice, like Netflix, they just automatically process your card every month. So this is something that we're, is popular in our personal lives and can benefit businesses as well. So again, it's just being able to put a payment method on file and then have that payment automatically applied on a recurring basis. So this can increase, of course, on-time payments and increase customer satisfaction by preventing them from getting late fees or, again, their services shut off. And then it's great for you as a business as well, because if you allow your customers to sign up for automatic payments, you can actually decide like when that payment is going to get processed, right? So if you just want all of your payments processed on like the 15th of every month, you can choose to do that. And then now you know exactly when you're going to get paid and you're going to like increase the number of early payments basically. All right, and so those are my 4 tips for improving your accounts receivable process. I did want to take 30 seconds just to talk a little bit about Notice. We've been integrating payment processing and accounts receivable into Microsoft Dynamics for the last 20 years. We also integrate with Acumatica, SAP, Oracle, or any third-party application or custom software through our APIs. And we offer credit card and e-check processing, payment hyperlinks, customer payment portals, and our parent company is Evo Payments, which is a large payment processor. So we can also help our customers with lowering their monthly credit card processing fees just by offering them lower rates in general, and then helping them with things like level 2 and 3 transaction support. And with that, again, I want to thank you, Amy, for having me. Here's our contact information if you want to get a hold of us, but I will send it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So it's funny that you mentioned, being able to pay online, I think is so much easier. And I've seen, or I've noticed that when you're also emailing invoices, a lot of those emails now go to spam because they have these attachments, and now everything, they all get flagged now. But if you can just send them an email with a link to pay, then you don't have to worry about it going to spam, them not getting your invoice. So I think that's a big help.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And it's so popular in like in our lives, right? Just like as consumers. So yeah, so I don't know what I would do without like my automatic payments or my click to pay.
I know automatic payments are great for monthly subscriptions and SPLA pricing, and so many of our businesses are now doing that. So that's an easy way to collect payments and not having to worry each month about it, which is really nice because it can be a headache otherwise.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate it joining me this month. And again, this is a monthly chat series, the second Tuesday of every month at 4 o'clock. So please join us and please spread the word. And if you have any questions, you have Notice's contact information here. You can also reach out to me. I will be also emailing this recording as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Callie, for being here and doing LinkedIn with me.
Awesome. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.